Okay, guys, so I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about this week's chapter's ending. Just because what happened at the end with these certain characters that show up is pretty much exactly what I called happening at the end of my review last week. And it's also something I specifically said I did not want to happen. So I'm a little torn about that, but at the same time, based off of some clues I picked up on while reading the chapter on characters that didn't show up and then what happened at the end with these certain characters, I'm starting to think that maybe things won't go exactly how I expect them to. I think I have a little bit of hope for next week's chapter that, it might advert my expectations and actually end up doing something that I didn't expect, but I'm hoping to happen. But anyway, it's hard to say. It's hard to talk about it without getting into specific details. So let's just jump right into the chapter review. Hey, what's up, everyone? Okay, so we are continuing with chapter 218, the trial of Asta and Sekre. And even though we're continuing the trial, we don't even start the chapter off with that. We actually start the chapter off by going throughout the Clover Kingdom, mostly the capital, but we go to some outskirt places like Hage Village as well. And we pretty much see exactly how everyone who is close to Asta reacts to the news that he's actually being put on trial, which is actually kind of funny. The way that they announced to the entire capital or to the entire kingdom that Asta is being put on trial for connections to a demon and being the one blamed for the actions of the elves that happened in the previous arc, they tell everyone by putting it in a newspaper. And it's kind of funny because if you're a One Piece fan, one of the biggest tropes in the series is that every time there's a new wanted poster out for Sanji, it's always this like completely horribly drawn picture that looks nothing like him that's used to represent him. And the same kind of thing happens in this chapter with Asta, whereas when they show a picture of him next to the article that's about him being put on trial, we see that Asta is, you could tell it's Asta, like you could look, just by looking at it, you could tell it's supposed to be Asta, but the drawing is too good looking. Like the way they drew Asta for that article, he looks way too fucking good. Like he looks incredibly good looking in that chapter. He looks nothing like how Asta actually does look. The only thing they kind of got right is that they have that mark that he has on his eye when he activates his black form. They have that, but nothing else of his black form is there. So not exactly sure why they show that mark. And like I said, he looks way too good looking in that chapter. He's wearing all the normal clothes he has the same hairstyle, even shows him with one of his swords. But he looks way too fucking good. But anyway, we get to see a lot of characters who are closely connected to Asta reacting to the news article about him being put on trial. Like we get to see Rebecca, we get to see Mother Teresa, we get to see Neej, who, now that I think about it, we haven't seen him since his introduction arc, have we? We haven't seen him at all since the last time the arc he was introduced till this chapter, I think, which is a little disappointing because now that I think about it, if I remember correctly, his snow magic lets him somewhat control people, like put them in a trance and like guide them, which I'm not sure if they were specifically said that he can only do that against children. But if that's not the case, then that would actually been really helpful against a lot of the fodder level elves during the invasion. Like he could have basically put them in a trance and kept them at bay long enough for the civilians to escape. It's just there's a lot of characters that Tabata didn't include in the arc that actually would have been helpful to see. Like they could have helped out a lot. I would at least like to see Neej and Fanzel and all of them, at least in some sort of way, in some like one small panel, helping out with everything. But what else? All right, we also got to see Mosa, we got to see Klaus, we got to see Sister Lily, the kids at the orphanage, the father at the orphanage, all reacting to what's going on with Asta. Now, interestingly enough, we didn't get to see we didn't get to see the elves that are still around, and we didn't get to see the Black Bull members. We didn't get to see any of these characters interact or basically react to the news that Asta is actually being put on trial through the newspaper. Now, with the Black Wolves, if you already read the chapter, you know that they end up showing up at the end of the chapter, and we get to see their reaction to it. But for the most part, when it comes to seeing the reaction to them or to the article, we don't see any of these characters react. Now, I'm going to bring this up later on because it kind of plays into a theory that I have, but we'll talk about that in a second. But you know what? Despite the fact that we don't see any of those characters, you know what characters we do get to see? We get to see Sally and all the other criminals that were a part of the last arc. And what we end up finding out is that they are all serving community service time as a way to make up for their crimes. Now, this is cool. This is actually kind of interesting way to actually keep them as part of like the capital and keep them somewhat connected to the story. Even though we end up finding out that the only reason why Rades is there is because instead of just leaving, he decided to stay behind with everyone else and actually serve community service time. Most likely just because he didn't want to be alone. Also, one other thing I want to mention about that is that even though we see Sally serving community service time, I'm hoping that once that's done, she will get the opportunity to end up joining the Black Bulls. I'm hoping her being a criminal isn't going to hinder her joining in any way, which now that I think about it shouldn't, because Gouch was a criminal and he got to become a full member. So hopefully she ends up being able to become one too. Because after seeing the way she interacts with a lot of the Black Bull members that she did interact with when they were teaming up to fight against Dorothy in that dream world, I was actually really looking forward to seeing her fully join the Black Bulls. It seemed like that last arc, every time she was involved in the story, it was basically heavily hinting at the fact that she's going to end up joining the Black Bulls. So I'm hoping that, this isn't Tabata backing off on that, or basically him trying to like put that to the side. Hopefully by the time this whole thing's over, she ends up joining the Black Bulls and becomes a full-fledged member. We also get to find out through Mimosa some more information on exactly what's going on with Dominato Kira. Basically, we get to see like we get a little bit of backstory about what kind of character he is, and we get a little bit on exactly how his magic works. Kind of just a clarification, because we all pretty much figured out from the first chapter he's introduced to up until now. We have all kind of an idea exactly how his magic works, and based off of what Mimosa says in this chapter is kind of confirming it. So basically, she mentions the fact that he is someone who is just all about justice. He does not care about who the person being accused is, and as long as they are guilty, he will enact justice on them. Then she mentions the fact that he even judged his own father and found him guilty and judged him accordingly. So, which I assume based off the flashback meant that he was put to death. I don't know, they don't really specify where he died, but I'm guessing based off the way the flashback went, he did. And basically kind of what she seemingly puts forward in this chapter, which like I said, we all pretty much guessed about his abilities, is that his magic is basically that he will accuse someone of a crime, and then his scales will judge whether or not they are innocent or guilty, and whichever way they tip is the way he's going to take it. So if they tip towards them, the person he's accusing being guilty, then he's going to judge them accordingly to their crime, which in Asta's case, if he ends up being judged guilty, would automatically mean that he's going to be sentenced to death. But here's the thing, we already all know that Asta is innocent. The only thing he is somewhat guilty of is the fact that he is basically tied to a demon. Like, if they try to accuse him of being tied to a demon, then yeah, they will have to see him as guilty because of the fact that he does have a demon sleeping inside his grimoire, so he is tied to one. But at the same time, he is not guilty of any of the crimes they are actually accusing him of. Like, he had no part in the entire events that just transpired with the whole demon and the elves invasion, besides actively fighting against them in order to save the Clover Kingdom and all its civilians. So they can't tie him to that, and they also can't really tie any of the Magic Knights or civilians who are possessed by elves for their actions against the Clover Kingdom, because they are being controlled by, like I said, by the elf spirits. They were basically had their bodies taken over. So really, they didn't actively do anything against the Clover Kingdom, so they can't be judged as guilty. Now, I still believe that Dominato Kira isn't actually against Asta. He's not trying to put the blame on Asta himself. He's just trying to basically do his job as a judge and judge him accordingly, and let basically the scales decide whether or not he's innocent or guilty. Now, this only goes into the idea, or I only believe this as far as the thinking that basically he has no say in which way his scales judge. Like, he can't control if they judge someone as guilty or innocent. They just actively do it themselves, and he just, reacts to their decision. So as long as he can't decide himself whether or not someone's guilty or innocent, or like manipulate his scales in any way, then I still believe, like I said, that he's not actually against Asta, and he actually might be more in favor of Asta. But if he can actively decide whether or not someone's guilty or innocent, like basically tell his scales which way to lean, then yeah, I'm going to have to assume that he actually is against Asta, and he actually is trying to fully put the blame on them. But you know what, that is going to suck if that ends up being the case, because I actually was hoping that Dominato Kira will actually be the one member of the Kira family who has a good relationship with Asta, because we know it's not going to be the Emperor. The Emperor is fully against Asta. He has no love for anyone who is not a member of the noble or royal houses, and ultimately, there's no way his character is going to do a 180. He's either going to end up dying, or be the comedic relief character who hates anyone below him for the rest of the series. Which I gotta be honest, I'm hoping for the former over the latter. But anyway, we finally get back to the trial, and we see Asta is still trying to protect Marie in his black form. And we see that everyone in the stands, basically all the nobles and royals who are at the courtroom, are kind of afraid of Asta. They're calling him a demon. They're trying to say that he needs to be sentenced to death. They're calling for his head. And we actually see Dominato react to his demon form, and he doesn't seem impressed. He doesn't seem scared. He doesn't seem surprised by this form like all the other people in the courtroom are. It seems like he expected it to happen, which is still leading me into thinking that maybe he's not actually against Asta. He has plans behind the scenes of trying to find a way to prove Asta innocent. But anyway, we don't see him really change any facial expression whatsoever, so he's still being that same sullen, no nonsense kind of character. And when we see Asta in the chapter, the first thing he does is basically try to defend himself by saying that yes, he has his black form that looks like a demon, but he now has full control over it, even though he still only uses it for a certain amount of time per day. He has full control over it now, so it doesn't go, wildly attack magic. He is in no way, shape, or form a threat to anyone in the Clover Kingdom, and that's basically his only argument in the chapter as to why he's innocent. But Damiano actually counters that, and his counter actually makes sense that just because you say you're innocent doesn't mean you are. I mean, you're showing up in this courtroom looking like a demon. How are we supposed to trust you when you have this form? And Asta kind of basically gets backed into the corner by what Domino says in the chapter, which he pretty much just reiterates what he said in a previous chapter to Asta in private, which is basically that either Asta is going to have to take the blame for everything, or the Magic Knights and civilians who are possessed by elves are going to have to take the blame. And who's the more likely to end up having to take the fall? This one person who, if the capital ends up, or the Clover Kingdom ends up losing, ultimately won't affect their military force all that much, or half of the military force and a few civilians basically take the blame. It's no brainer who he's going to end up having to choose. And in a kind of a dickish move, Dominato actually not even kind of dickish, this is a completely dickish move. Dominato basically says that if Asta is found guilty and he tries to make any type of way of escaping, basically if he attacks the courtroom and manages to fight his way out of there and run away, he will still be labeled as a criminal. And in his stead, the people at Hage Village, basically the Sister Lily, the kids at the orphanage, the father, members of the Black Wolves, pretty much anyone who has a close connection to Asta will be judged in his stead, found guilty, and sentenced to die. So they basically back Asta into a corner in the chapter saying that either he takes the blame for everything, or everyone he cares about has to. So yeah, now that Asta's backed into a corner, him and Sakurai don't really have a mood to play. They're both kind of just trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. And this is when the thing I said I didn't want to happen ends up happening. We see the wall to the courtroom burst open, all the smoke comes pouring in, and then walks right through the hole all the Black Wolf members who are there to help out Asta. And they all give their little speeches exactly why they're there to help him out and how much they care about him. And it all, it's cute. It's a good moment. It's a heartwarming moment. We get to see the Black Wolf members come in defense of their friend, which we always knew they were going to do. It's in their character, so it's not a surprise that this happened. But like I said, I still didn't want to see them, after they were pretty much the heroes of the last arc, end up becoming criminals in the very next arc because of some bullshit politics. Oh no, that being said, even though I didn't want this to happen, I'm actually looking forward to a comedic moment in the next chapter, because when Gouch shows up with the Black Bulls, he does not mention the fact that, or he does not know that Marie is actually there. He is there simply to save Asta. So once he ends up finding out that Marie is there and that she was actually put in danger, we are in for a very funny moment where he actually goes wild and probably tries to attack everyone in the courtroom, shooting off his mirror lasers at everyone because of the fact that she was put in danger, possibly even Asta for the fact that he's holding her. Now, even though I didn't want this to happen, one nice moment that did come out of it is the fact that when Yami's giving a speech about how Asta, is a member of the Black Bulls, he's their friend, and they protect her own, he also says that Sakurai is a member of the Black Bulls and that she is coming with them regardless of what the trial says or regardless of what the court says. That, like I said, they protect their own. And this actually is a nice, cute moment because Sakurai, as you can see in the chapter how she reacts to Yami saying this, she didn't think that they saw her as a friend. They didn't see her as a member of the Black Bulls. But no, everyone, even though they just met her, they know the fact that she was Nero. They know the fact that she has been with them for all these months. So they still see her, even though they're just now meeting her human form. They see her as a full-fledged member of the Black Bulls, and they are there to protect her as much as they are there to protect Asta. So as of right now, it seems like the Black Bulls are actually going to end up becoming criminals and traitors to the Clover Kingdom. But here's the thing. I saw a few clues during this chapter that leads me to think that maybe something might actually end up happening differently in the next chapter. So if you notice, we saw a lot of people reading the newspaper article in this chapter and reacting to it. But we didn't see, like I mentioned, we didn't see any of the Black Bulls members reacting to it. And we didn't see Yuno, and we didn't see the elves. Now, we saw the Black Bulls show up at the end of this chapter in a way to basically try to save Asta from the situation, even if it meant that they become criminals. So, this leads me to think that maybe if we're following that same logic, since we didn't see Yuno, the person who actually has the closest connection to Asta, and we didn't see the elves, who, because of Patry, has a close connection to him as well as the fact that all three of the elves who are still around all fought Asta and know what kind of character he is, they all would have some reason to basically go in there and fight in his defense. So since we didn't see any of them react to the newspaper article, and we saw the Black Bulls show up at the end of the chapter to fight for Asta, this leads me to think that maybe in the next chapter we'll see the rest of these characters show up in Asta's defense. More likely Yuno than the elves, just because of the fact that I think that the elves actually might be out of the kingdom at this point. But who's to say? It's been a few days, so they could be anywhere at this point. But you know what? It doesn't even just have to be Yuno and the elves. It could be any of the characters that we saw in this chapter, or some of the characters we didn't see. Like, we know that Fugoyan and Mario Yona have like Asta, so they could show up along with Leo. We could see Nozel. We know that Nozel has a newfound respect for Asta, so he could show up in his defense. Which, by the way, I kind of want to point out that, in my opinion, it probably would have been more helpful for Mimosa and Noel to get their family members to show up, since they are part of the royal family. They make up 2 of the 3 houses of the royal family, and show up in Asta's defense and try to argue in his favor. Then the Black Bulls is, going headfirst, charging in, ready to fight. But, Tabata wants to write the story he wants to write. I'm not going to argue against it. Tabata hasn't let me down up to this point. There's been a few chapters I didn't like here and there, but ultimately I like the story overall. So I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt and see where he plans on taking this. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all that happened in the chapter. It's pretty much it for the review. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about this chapter yet. Maybe if I read it a few more times before next week's chapter comes out, I'll like it a little bit more. And I probably will, if I'm right about, Yuno and all the other characters showing up and helping out Asta, and basically they overwhelm the court and making them, even regardless of the Scales decision, see Asta as innocent, then maybe I'll like this chapter a little bit more in hindsight. But yeah, as of right now, I'm still up in the air about it. But let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought about the chapter. Did you like the fact that the Black Bulls stay true to their characters and actually end up showing up? Did you like the fact that we got to see Asta? I don't know where I was going with that. Basically, did you like the chapter or not? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that's it for the video, guys. That's it for the review. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.